Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, August 6th. Derek Van Riper here. Eno Saris is back. Eno, good news. I didn't quite burn the podcast to the ground while you were gone. We got close. We had matches. We had a little bit of wind. Had an under-the-radar reunion. Almost turned into a Brewers show.
God.
Just full chaos. We have a lot of Brewers talk coming up later on in today's show because I sat down with Vinny Rottino from FanDuel Sports Network Wisconsin. And Vinny's one of the TV analysts over there. Got a scouting background, played in the big leagues. Thought, hey, let's talk to Vinny about how this Brewers team keeps doing what it's doing. Because everyone's paying attention to the Brewers now. So I actually felt like it was a really timely topic and the right guest. So my conversation with Vinny comes up in just a little while. A lot of stuff happened while you were gone, man. Roman Anthony, fresh off the presses, just agreed to an 8-year, $130 million extension with the Red Sox. This according to Jeff Passan of ESPN. Aaron Judge is back from the IL. We've got a slop index of sorts that you've created to dissect just how good or bad the Yankees defense really has been. So we're going to try and poke around at that for a little bit. And we get some other news that you may have missed over the last couple of days as well, because there's a lot happening around the league following the deadline. Oh, all the relievers that got traded at the trade deadline have been terrible. Just to fill you in.
Because I'm writing a who's got the best bullpen piece right now. So that's good timing.
Someone
will blow up while I'm publishing it.
Your card, yeah, the three best bullpens in the league, air quotes card. It's been bad for just about everybody on that card since we put that on the screen. So look out, everybody. Look out. Let's talk about Roman Anthony's start. 8 years, $130 million. Escalators could bring it up to $230 million based on the reports we're seeing right now. There's a club option for the year 2034. I promise that's a real year. I don't know if we'll get there, but 2034 is a year that is covered by a club option. Projections are always a little wonky for a player with this little time in the big leagues. And honestly, if Roman Anthony's not hitting 20 homers per year by year 3 in the big leagues, I'd be very surprised. I'd even probably eat the hat on my head right now if it's still available 2 years from now. Roman Anthony's hitting .283 with a 400 OBP, 428 slug in 46 big league games. That is really good. That's a 133 WRC+. The only thing he's not doing is lifting the ball enough, right? A pretty high ground ball rate, above 50% so far. That's the concern. Maybe the one thing that will hold him back from tapping into that power right away. But he doesn't chase. 23.2% O-swing percentage. He hits the ball hard, 58% hard hit rate. And those are pretty much the two things you want entering the league for a guy that could become a superstar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the chase rate is exciting for how he should age. I mean, right now, it's the 25th best chase rate in baseball. I think that I'm just as excited about the sort of top-end exit velos, a 113 in the majors and a 116 in the minors. That just shows he has excellent bat speed, excellent raw power, and the way that players age, supposedly, the aging curve suggests that you hit fewer ground balls as you approach your peak. Since he's just 21, that's 5 years of improving your ground ball rate, even if it's incremental. I think that you could push this up to 25, 30 home runs at his peak. He's got speed. Defense is good. The contact rate, he's actually a little bit passive. The way he gets to that awesome chase rate is he doesn't swing that much, and he doesn't swing at pitches in the zone at a league average rate. So there's little toggles that you maybe could be more aggressive at some points, because if you look at his swinging strike rate, that is excellent and better than average. And so, you could see some seasons where his strikeout rate is better than average because he starts swinging at more pitches inside the zone. So there's a couple little toggles. There's a couple of things that will age really well. And you made a joke that this was, worth $500 million on the free agent market. And I know I'm just fiddling around with a pen and a piece of paper and a calculator, but I came up with $470 million.
Yeah, man, I didn't need a pen or a piece of paper or anything. Just thought about it and spit out a number.
Of course, you have to change that because, 3 of those years are supposed to be league minimum, in terms of how he gets paid through the process. And then you have arbitration. The idea is that you get paid at sort of a 20, 40, 60, 80 level. Like you're 40, 60, 80, like 40%, 60%, 80% of market value. That's how it's supposed to work. And so, you wouldn't pay him $470 million because you wouldn't have to. But it is, something to think about that, the math that I did left him as a 6-win player. So if he left a year or two on the table, gave them club options or whatever it is, whatever those details are, those are important details. Now, he's so young that he just signed, what did you say, an 8-year contract?
Yes, 8 years. It starts next year. It's an 8-year extension that begins in 2026.
That's crazy because he can still get to the free agency at 29-30. So he could still get another big deal. This doesn't preclude him from anything. Plus, you said there's a bunch of escalators. So it's a little bit like the Julio Rodriguez contract where he's got, these escalators to be MVP and so on and so forth. He starts getting paid a lot better. So, you write something down where you get at least $100 million. And if you're good, you get $200 million. And you get a chance to get back on the market and get one more big deal. So it works for both sides, but there are some little sort of asterisks I want to put on it that it gets a little hairy if he could have been out on the market at 27.
Right, he would have got the free agency young because he debuted young. So that's the tricky part.
2 years there, that's a lot. Because if you get on the market as a 27-year-old 6-win player, that's Manny Machado deal, and you start talking about $300 million deals. You get on the market as a 30-year-old 5 or 6-win player, you still get a decent chunk. But those years matter a lot. When they love it when you're a 27-year-old free agent. Ask Juan Soto.
Yeah, that went well for him. Bryce Harper, as it turns out, was a pretty big bargain once he hit free agency, I think, relative to initial expectations. So there's just all sorts of things that can happen if you hit peak age free agency the way Roman Anthony could have, but it's $130 million guaranteed, up to $230 million, and a shot to still get another good deal at the end of that because he won't be so far past peak where that next big deal won't necessarily be out there. As far as a floor goes, we're kind of looking pie in the sky. Everything clicks. $500 million worth of value, surplus values, everything in the major league front office right now. But from just a real, hey, your baseball team's pretty good perspective, having Roman Anthony for a couple extra years, buying back some of those years that you maybe wouldn't have had if he'd left via free agency, that's nice to solidify your core. You've now extended Anthony, Christian Campbell, and Garrett Crochet all within the past calendar year. And I saw some of the chatter. Craig Goldstein and Mike Petriello starting to say, is Craig Breslow really good at this or really bad at this? Or do we still not actually know? Because on the one hand, yes, the saga with Rafael Devers kind of looks like some kind of fumbling of management and people skills. On the other hand, the players he's getting and then locking up to long-term deals, it looks kind of like they're building their version of the core Atlanta had a few years ago, right? Where you start to identify the 3, 4, 5 foundational pieces, get them in place as long as possible, and then eventually the next step that we assume is going to happen is that you leverage your position as one of the biggest markets in baseball and supplement that core with the talent you need to go back into that perennial contender mode.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm reading the tea leaves right, I think he would love to do something that the Dodgers were doing a few years ago where they bought a bunch of players on high value short-term contracts. So he's got his young guys locked into long-term contracts through their peak ages, and then he supplements it with, 2 and 60 to a 34-year-old starting pitcher. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. I'm calling my shot there. I don't know who the player is, but that's where it's going. I mean, I like some of this. There's nothing on that level that we haven't seen before, right? This is sort of lock up your guys and, try not to get stuck into any long-term deals on old guys. Don't just try to have roster flexibility. Don't be locked into a DH, stuff like that. So that doesn't move the needle too much for me. It's he's been smart on that level. I think that the communications aspect needs some work. Like, I think that's what I got out of the Devers thing. It was poor communication with your player, with the media, poor media skills, which is a little bit surprising because he's pretty good at talking. It's just there's a toggle there between like giving up information, not giving up information, getting your story out there. It's hard. Some GMs are better at it than others. So I think that's something to work on. And then under the hood in player development, they are very aggressive with identifying key metrics that they care about and pushing, all their coaching towards those key metrics. So we'll see. I think some of the key metrics you see with Roman Anthony: great swing decisions, great high-end bat speed. And in terms of the ground ball rate, if it ages well, you've got a superstar. If it doesn't age that well, like what, Christian Yelich?
Exactly the floor that I thought we could probably establish, right? I mean, Yelich, when he came into the league, had similar plate skills, didn't chase, hit the ball on the ground a lot. I don't think the two differences might be, I don't think Yelich's athleticism defensively was ever going to make him more than a corner outfield player. I think
the same one difference. Anthony, actually.
You don't think? Okay, so I thought maybe there was a little more there.
His sprint speed is only like 68th percentile or something.
Yeah, so in that regard, maybe they're a little more similar than I thought. But the other big difference is I don't recall the power grades for Yelich as a prospect being quite as lofty as they are for Roman Anthony, right? When you look at
that might reflect how we think about things differently, though. Like if you think about bat speed, max exit velo, was that like a thing that we used to evaluate prospects when Christian Yelich was coming up?
It was not.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good comp. I mean, and it may just follow that. And I bet you if you just gave him Yelich's early career, the first 8 years, this would be a pretty good deal for both sides.
Let me get the calculator, fire up some algorithm. No, it was probably worth about $250 million. Trust me, it's probably about right. So other news, Aaron Judge returned from the IL on Tuesday. The Yankees lost anyway because everything's falling apart for the Yankees, depending on what you read. I mean, results-wise, it's been pretty rough lately. This stat kind of blows my mind. Devin Williams has now allowed 26 earned runs in 2025, which is equal to the total he allowed between 2022 and 2024 combined. That's like 2.5 seasons because he was hurt for a good chunk of last season. But still, Devin Williams has been really good year over year, and to see that he's struggling with velocity that hasn't really fallen off that much, hasn't fallen below the previously established fastball velocity range. The model numbers are still holding pretty steady for Williams. It's bizarre, and I think we're going to dig more into some of the struggles of relievers from the trade deadline with Trevor on our Thursday episode. But the question a lot of people keep asking about this Yankees team is Aaron Boone the right guy to manage the team? Are they sloppy because of something unique to Boone or the staff? And it's like, I just wanted to kind of cut through that a little bit and say, okay, what do the numbers say? Can we maybe take the Yankees out of the fishbowl, right? Pull the magnifying glass away and just say, what are they really defensively? I looked at a couple things, I saw by defensive runs saved, they have a couple of good defenders. Right, Jazz Chisholm doesn't qualify at any one position because he's split time between second and third. He's a +5 defensive run saved at second base,
which might surprise some people.
Yeah, he's good at second. He was below average at third because he never played it prior to moving there last year. He
didn't like it himself, he said. So
right, so he's actually a good defender now he's at second. He was a negative before playing third, so you got some improvement with that adjustment. You add Ryan McMahon at the deadline. We know McMahon's a good defender. Okay, that's an upgrade. Aaron Judge, one of their only players that's actually a plus by outs above average and defensive run save. He's a +2 by defensive run save, 2 outs above average. Volpe, a -7 outs above average. His defense has fallen off. We've talked about that a little bit on the show. Goldschmidt, slightly below average by outs above average, slightly above by defensive run save, fine. Austin Wells is a good defensive catcher.
Yeah.
So nothing to worry about there. Trent Grisham, -4 defensive run save, -1 outs above average. So you're getting a little bit of a hit when he plays.
Older guy to be playing in center, even if he was good earlier.
Right. And I think when you play Grisham in center, you're getting good defense from Cody Bellinger in the corners. Bellinger's slightly below average in center, and you get better defense from Judge by not having him in center. So it's like the lesser of the best of the three options you can play out there makes the other two guys better.
It's not a terrible defensive team when you look at all the parts. I mean,
no,
you can get
Jason
mad
Dominguez
at
is the bad defender, and Volpe's
he's a bad
been
defender, and Volte has fallen off. But
yeah.
I mean, you have a card for outs above average? I mean, it was
I got defensive runs saved, and like that chart, like okay,
that
you look at
doesn't
that, like
scream to me this is terrible. It's like
looks pretty average.
Defensive runs tells me that like okay, Jason's not great,
right? And what you lose,
but you have an outfield configuration where you can go Grisham, Bellinger, Judge. Now, obviously, the injury impacts this, where Judge has to play. He has to play a DH, and so then you're asking Stanton or Dominguez to play in the outfield, and that's not great. But almost every team has like 2 or 3 guys that aren't great at defensively.
Right. So this looks like a pretty typical, like average sort of overall defensive team. Like, and I think there's something else happening. If you look at it by fielding run value, it's almost the same kind of pattern, maybe skewing slightly above average, where your best defender is offset by your worst defender. Your second worst defender offsets your second best defender by actual run value. And you end up kind of close to the middle. And that's probably not that much of a surprise when you think about how this roster was built. I think this comes into something else. So you put together a board kind of looking at sloppy mistakes. So how did you define like the sloppy mistakes or the things that we really notice?
So the first thing I wanted to do was to take their overall defensive value and their ability to their overall defensive value and their overall base running value, right? So I just wanted to say, hey, are they really bad at running the bases and really bad defensively? That would be a team that's not good at the little things, right? Mm-hmm. So I put that together, and you do have some teams that you would expect, young teams, bad teams, the Nationals. So the worst by base running plus fielding are the Angels, Nationals, Rockies, White Sox, and Orioles. I think that's not too surprising. I mean, it's the Orioles in the middle of a bad year, some injuries. They weren't able to play some of their key guys at key times. The Nationals are a young team where they actually have players that aren't great defenders that may play elsewhere on the diamond later, as they sort through this. And then, I mean, the Rockies are just on every bad list. Kind of the Rockies and White Sox, just not surprising to be there. And then the best teams are the Cubs, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Brewers, and Cardinals. It's like kind of duh-ish. I mean, this is if there is a cardinal way, and everyone just died from their eyes rolling through their back of their heads. But if there is a cardinal way, it is this, right? Be good at these things. And the Brewers just being really good at both of these things is part of, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that on this episode. But those are good teams doing good things. So the Yankees in this regard end up like really just the middle of the pack. They're just like shocker.
Yeah, they're
just like how we described them. But I also just thought of the subjective experience of living in this big market and how like the media is like, it's pretty intense. Like if you like just in terms of me and my work, if I'm in the opposing clubhouse, like I always am, the Brewers come to town, there's 2 guys, and the Pirates come to town, there's 1 or 2 guys, and the Marlins come to town, there's nobody. You know what I mean? Like that's what the small market is like. And when the Yankees come to town, there are like literally 12 traveling writers. And you're just like, what? Like this, it's so different. So no, I want to put this back up again. So this is slop we see. So this is just errors and being thrown out on the bases like a nincompoop. That's, by the way, that's toot bland, thrown out on the bases like a nincompoop. So you take errors and toot blands and you add them together, and that's slop we see. That's slop that's really easy to see. And there we go. The Yankees are 4th. Now, I think part of the problem here is that this is not actually a ranking that takes everything into account. This is just makes the big mistakes that we see. They're like the Yankees are a pretty good base running team when it comes to stolen bases. They're just maybe slightly too aggressive when it comes to taking extra bases, right? And errors are not a good way to measure a team defensively. The rank on the one side of the least errors is not the best teams in baseball defensively.
Right.
There's not a real tight correlation. And it all comes down to like somebody like Volpe, because he's young and was a good defender before and has good range, can get to a ball and then make a mistake. Right. And we can see, oh my God, the mistake. But there's not like, it's really hard to see the getting to the ball thing. This is so funny because it's like the reverse problem that Jeter had, which was that Jeter wouldn't get to balls. They'd go by, and the whole joke was like pass the diving Jeter, right? And then, he would do really well on the balls he got to. And so everyone was like, oh, he's a great defender. And the numbers always said he wasn't. So it's sort of ironic that they would have like a sort of opposite problem here. But what I think is you have a rabid media market with slop you can see, with mistakes you can see, errors, getting thrown out, trying to stretch into a double or getting thrown out on third. Like getting thrown out on third is just the easiest way to make the announcer lose his mind and like the dad in his recliner start saying bad words, and you know what I mean? It's just like everybody gets on Twitter and
It's also it reminded me of Gary Sanchez and the reputation Gary Sanchez had defensively, in part because of struggles with pass balls. If you're watching a catcher play defense and you're on your couch or you're in the stands or you're anywhere watching the game, you notice a passed ball.
Yes.
The passed ball and the actual negative value of the pass ball relative to being, a great
Well, it just doesn't happen that often.
It just
think it happens often because we notice it when we see it.
But if you're someone that's among the league leaders in pass balls and it looks like it's really happening a lot, you definitely notice that. And you think, oh, he's a terrible catcher. Look at all the pass balls. And it discounts framing and it discounts the other defensive things that are much harder to see with your eyes because it's not an egregious mistake. So I do think the sloppy mistakes are always going to get more attention. I think it's also, there's probably something about being an announcer and criticizing someone's lack of range at a position like shortstop, especially. If you didn't play the game, this is one of those areas where I feel like you're going to have a really hard time pinpointing, oh, the footwork was sloppy at shortstop. Like the analyst in the booth might be able to say that because they played the position, they can see it better. The announcer might not be able to pick on that as easily. Whereas something that you boot off your gloves, some stupid mistake, fireball into the stands. Yeah. Bad base running error. They're running the bases like drunks, right? That was the John Sterling line, I think, last season. Like, it's just a mistake.
There might, I'm not saying that there's nothing there. They're obviously, if they're average, like even in the slop, we don't, like even in the base running plus fielding runs, if they're sort of averages there, like, that's not great. Like, if you want to be a contender, like you want to like, button this up. And in terms of errors, like, the Yankees are 21st in errors and in rank extra base taken, that's 26. So I would, if I was the Yankees, be investigating like my third base coach. Like I don't want to put anyone on the spot, like specifically. I don't even know what their name is, but I'm just saying, like, and it wouldn't be just the third base coach. It would be like, what are our strategy sessions with the third base coach? What is our front office telling our third base coach? Do we have different numbers on this? Do we feel about this differently? Do we want to be aggressive and we're okay with running into some outs because we win some games that way? So, I would say that there's something to think about, but it's like this also. I think the Yankees are a pretty good team. I think they're going to make the playoffs. When the playoffs comes around, if they have good luck in terms of who's healthy, and if Volpe has sort of figured some stuff out, like they can be a World Series contender. I think it's so weird to say that right now because people are like, they're not even going to make the play. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I think they'll make the playoffs. I know that it's getting a little hairy. They're down, they're down a little bit. But I also think, they were missing Judge for a little bit. And I think this bullpen is actually really good. Now I think they put together a really good bullpen, and I know the bullpen has blown some games, but I think they'll figure it out. So, it's a little bit like the discussion of is Milwaukee the best team in baseball?
I'm just picturing the Norman
Which I may
Rockwell.
be wrong about. They keep staying at the number one spot.
I'm just picturing you, the Norman Rockwell meme. You know, you're like, the Yankees bullpen is good. Like you're the guy standing there with the letter in his pocket.
Oh yeah, standing up with the pocket.
That's you right now, because nobody wants to say that right now because everything is so reactionary in terms of.
Oh my God, how's my story going to be received? I don't think I have the Yankees as number one. Thank God.
I think you should publish that story on a Friday and maybe not check your mentions until Sunday. That's my advice. It is non-professional advice. But that's probably how I'd handle the situation if I were in your shoes. I'm not surprised, though, that of the teams that are not making the sloppy mistakes, we see the Rangers, Phillies, Brewers, Astros, and Tigers as the best 5. 4 of those teams are in first place. And the other one, the Rangers, is at least within reach of first place and maybe a playoff spot right now. So I do think there's something here that matters. I think it's part of an explanation for, hey, why is this Brewers team so good? It's not making the silly mistakes. Like it's trying to avoid beating yourself. It's running the bases really well. It's a whole bunch of things that I got to talk about with Vinny Rottino.
You know, some kudos should probably go out to like the Phillies for, you know, taking a bad defensive team, taking a team that honestly had a lot of these same concerns for people, you know, and putting them, you know, into the spot where by fielding runs, they are so they're in the top 10. And in terms of base running, they're right up there. So, you know, I do think that if we were going to put range up against, you know, they may not have the best range in baseball. They have a 30-plus-year-old shortstop, and you know, there's a lot of same personnel here but they've done something. The Phillies have done something. They've improved in this regard, and that also gives hope to the Yankees to just be like, you know. That's the part that is, I think, probably most frustrating to Yankees fans is like, isn't this like why we lost the World Series?
Yeah, we're still making these mistakes. I get it. I get that. I get that frustration.
Yeah. But then, on the other hand, like Dominguez is a pretty good young bat. And like, what else are you going to do? Like there is a little bit of the like, you know, a little bit of an issue emanating from DH.
Right. Because of the contract you have with Stanton, not having that spot available. And Stanton's hitting well enough on a per game basis to where he's not hurting you. He's just putting a crunch on your roster that is making the defense of Jason Dominguez hurt you.
Like you could play Dominguez at DH. You know?
Ordinarily, yeah.
If this was to make this a better, like to fix some of these problems, you'd be like, okay, Dominguez at DH. I'm going to talk to the third base coach and we're going to be a little bit less aggressive, you know, and like maybe it could be a really easy turnaround. I know there are also some people that really doubt Aaron Boone's ability to like sort of do anything about this. I don't want to take any accountability off his table, but I would say that these are the kind of things that a whole front office has their hands in.
The whole organization. And that's something I talked about with Vinny Rottino. I mean, you have to have everybody in the organization on the same page, your coaching staff, your front office. It just has to be there. You have to have the right players that fit into your system. And I think that's maybe the one thing that is as good as the Yankees are. I think they're a good team. I agree with you that they're much more likely to still be a playoff team than not. I think there's still something just a little bit askew. You can have great coaches, you can have a great front office and great players and just have a little bit that's out of alignment. I think that's how I would describe the Yankees right now. It's not a catastrophic failure. It's just needing to get the last little bit right. If they do that, I think they can still be a really dangerous team come playoff time. All right, nobody in the league hotter than the Brewers right now, so we'll get to my conversation with Vinny Rottino. Now it is our pleasure to be joined by Vinny Rottino, one of the analysts for the Brewers TV crew at FanDuel Sports Network, Wisconsin. Vinny, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Derek.
So we're having this conversation Tuesday afternoon. The Brewers are in the middle of a series against the Braves in Atlanta. 68-44, best record in baseball right now. And J.R. Radcliffe from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel just put a stat out Monday night. The Brewers are having the best 60-game stretch in franchise history. They've gone 43-17 in their last 60, which is just absurd. And I just saw a couple hours ago, the Washington Post had a headline on a Chelsea Janes story that just said, the Brewers the best team in baseball. That shouldn't be possible. So I wanted to talk to you because I wanted you to help break this down. I watch this team almost every day. You watch them every single day. And I think there is still a little bit of a, how are they doing that? Even with some people very close to this club.
I agree. I mean, we watch them and we're, not that you're expecting them to kind of have a lull. You're not, just because of the way that they're playing baseball. And the manager that is leading this team, and Pat Murphy, is just doing a phenomenal job last 2 seasons. Last year's NL Manager of the Year. I mean, he's going to win back-to-back awards. How can he not? But it's just a bunch of guys, it's a bunch of grinders that want to play the game the right way. They play really sound, fundamentally sound baseball. Offensively, they're just pesky as can be. They do not chase outside the zone. On the pitching side of things, they have a really good, kind of sneaky, really good starting rotation, and then they have enough weapons in the back end of the bullpen to get the job done and close games out. Trevor McGill, quietly one of the best closers in all baseball, 25 saves now after his save last night in Atlanta. Just doing a phenomenal job at the back end of the bullpen, and then their defense is playing great. And then the thing that's not talked about a whole lot, Derek, is their ability to run the bases really, really well, really aggressively. Some of the best team speed in all of baseball, steal bases, go first to third. They just put so much pressure on opposing offense, on opposing pitching staffs and opposing defenses that if you make a mistake against the Milwaukee Brewers any given night, they're going to win, and they're going to take advantage of it. And all of a sudden now they have so much momentum in stacking wins on top of each other. They're at a point now in their season where it's like they expect to win every single night, despite not having a lot of household names on the national scale in terms of who is on this roster. So it is so much fun to watch. I know you know that. And really, anyone that's tuning in to this team right now, they say the same thing. They say, my goodness, that is a fun brand of baseball. And it is, and they're doing it at such a high clip. It's hard to look away. It's a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and I think some of the attention started to pick up around the time Jacob Misiorowski got called up. It's hard not to watch Jacob Misiorowski. I mean, it's a guy that seems like he was built in a pitching lab, currently on the 15-day IL with a tibia contusion, but the indications are that it's not too serious. There's no structural damage from the X-rays and imaging. But what adjustments have you seen from Misiorowski since last season when you got looks at him in spring training, and even this spring? I know you guys have talked on the broadcast about a conversation Chris Hook had with him where he really had to kind of lay into him a little bit because he was so frustrated with the lack of results that Miz was getting in the spring.
Remember the prospect game where it was kind of like scattered all over the place? His repertoire is always, the stuff has always been just totally off the charts, right? He's 6'7", 210 pounds, wiry, lanky, super loose delivery, just incredible amount of arm speed that he generates. Fastball up to 100 and 203 miles per hour. He's got great extension numbers. So not only is it a great fastball, the perceived velocity on the fastball is even a couple of miles per hour harder than for the hitter, just because it's some of the best extension in all the game. People don't talk about the release height as well, right? So it's a low release height, so it's a flat plane through the zone. It's just the ability to be in the zone was kind of the question mark, right? So we all watched that prospect game against the Reds this spring, and I'd be lying to you, Derek, if I thought that, oh my goodness, this guy's going to end up as a reliever. I mean, just because of the fact that it is just all over the place. He wasn't able to repeat his delivery. And how could he, right? I mean, 6'7", super quick arm, just arms and legs flailing all over the place. Going to be a hard delivery to repeat. Chris Hook deserves a lot of credit here. He had that come to Jesus speech with him. Hey, we need you to be better. We can't just have you not follow the regimented plan, the work in between starts that you need to do. And so he went down to AAA. He took it to heart, went down to AAA. The other two guys that deserve a lot of credit here are Justin Message, who is the AAA pitching coach, Brian Leslie, kind of dual pitching coach roles that they serve down there in AAA Nashville. Justin, remember, came over from the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was the Pittsburgh Pirates bullpen coach last year. So what did they do in Pittsburgh to help Paul Skeens kind of repeat his delivery? Although he kind of had it at LSU already, but they kind of implemented the same thing. They put the water bag on him. They put the water bag and they started doing those drills with him. And all of a sudden, he started to repeat what his upper half was doing through release. And it has been night and day. You take a look at some of the videos from last year, from even his AAA outings out of the bullpen last year in Nashville. to now, it is a night and day difference. He is controlling his deliveries, controlling that upper half. He's repeating his delivery at such a high level. And all of a sudden now, he goes from well below average being just in the zone to now above average being in the zone with his stuff. And that's all he needs to do, Derek. I mean, you look at this stuff and it's like, as long as he's throwing strikes, he's going to dominate big league hitters. 38% strikeout rate is absurd at this point in his big league career. And I don't see it slowing down just because of the fact that he's been able to handle all the pressure that's been put on him and still repeat that delivery night in, night out when he's taking the bump.
Yeah, he's a problem for opposing hitters in every imaginable way. And I think having a starter like that can be a top of your rotation is something the Brewers haven't always had. Even though the pitching program's come a long way over the past decade, the number of quality arms they've found and developed over the years, it's as good as it's probably ever been in franchise history. Misiorowski is just like a cut above anything I've ever seen on a mound before. Brandon Woodruff, impressive return from shoulder surgery this year so far. It's a huge story. And he had multiple kind of fluke setbacks on that rehab assignment at AAA. It was a serious enough injury. It was an anterior capsule repair in his shoulder, which is a major injury to come back from. His first start back this year in Miami, I think, is my favorite regular season game of the year up to this point. 37-4 strikeout to walk ratio in just 28 and a third innings, 6 innings or in 4 of those 5 outings. How is he doing it with the stuff being a little bit less crisp than it was pre-surgery, right? This isn't the high-end, front-of-the-line guy in terms of movement and velocity. I mean, the thing I saw in that first start back, I don't know if I've ever seen Brandon Woodruff locate as well as he did in that very first start of the season. But what's been the difference for him, and what's been able to kind of unlock this next level from him?
Yeah, so it's been kind of a revelation, I think, to me. And I got to go back and look at some of his starts from 22 and 23 when he was in 21, even when he was completely dominating the league with that angry fastball. And you mentioned like the stuff is down. And that's what we call it in the media. And he was actually surprised that you guys, that's actually a thing. You guys call my fastball an angry fastball when it was up in the upper 90s. And like, yes, it's an angry fastball because, guys do not want to contend against that fastball in the upper 90s against Brandon Woodruff because he's got that 4-seamer and 2-seamer combination. When that is working and it's tunneling out of the same tunnel, it's very difficult for a hitter to discern which one's coming. Now at 96 to 98, it is virtually unhittable. I think hitters, both the combination of the 4-seamer, 2-seamer back in 23, hitters were hitting under 200 on both pitches. And now in 2025, they're still hitting under 200 against both pitches. How is he doing it when it's 3 miles per hour slower on both of them? And it's the fact that he is commanding them to spots exceptionally well. Now, I will say that it's been a revelation for me to understand, like, maybe we didn't give him as much credit as he deserved in terms of his ability to command both those pitches before. Because, again, it looked like he was just gripping it, ripping it, letting them eat inside the zone somewhere, usually at the top rail of the zone, and then that was dominating hitters. I think there was some of that, but I also think that he was able to get the ball to spots. And I don't think we were giving him as much credit as he deserved, because now maybe the command actually has ticked up a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit more focus as to getting the ball to the glove that he needs to in order to get hitters out with that 3 miles per hour down on average with his fastball now. So I think there's both. I think there's some of that. Like, he has always had that touch and feel, but now I think it is ticked up a little bit because, yes, he is nailing spots. I'm right there with you, Derek. He is absolutely just dotting the zone wherever the catcher puts the glove. William Contreras or Danny Jansen now, or it was Eric Haas before. He is nailing those spots. And let's give credit to the changeup also. It's been a very good changeup here so far this season, and it's keeping hitters off balance. Really, the only runs he's given up is when he has made a rare mistake in the zone with the fastball. They've been getting hit out of the park. He's given up 5 home runs so far on the season, but that's it. He's not giving up hits with runners in scoring position, and this has been just super fun to watch from Woody.
And before Woodruff was back and before Misiorowski got promoted, Freddie Peralta was serving as the ace. He still really kind of is, just based on the combination of experience and results. And it's nice to see a trio atop the rotation that you think about like a playoff series. You say, well, okay, they're going to line up as well as anybody does in the NL with the top three starters. I think that's a nice change to possibly have, kind of having that in your back pocket. With Freddie Peralta, the fastball velo's up about a half tick since last season. He's increased the curveball usage mostly at the expense of the slider. And I've kind of wondered if that's helped him get the home run rate down, because that has been one of the ways you could beat Freddie Peralta in the past. There'd be some days where he'd have trouble keeping the ball in the yard, and that home run rate has actually come down just a little bit this year.
He's turned himself into really just not a total pitchability pitcher, because it's still about the stuff with Freddie, right? It's that great fastball with the deception, his ability to ride it up in the zone. So, but he is mixing his stuff better. He's mixing in the changeup better. But it is, and that's a good observation, Derek, is the fact that he is throwing the curveball more. Now, watch his starts this year compared to last year. He's way over on the third base side of the rubber, and he steps across his body. So think about what his lower half has to do in order to get through the baseball. And I know you mentioned the fastball velocity is actually up a little bit when we talked off air. And so it's the curveball usage and it's the fastball velocity is up a little bit. Think about what his lower half has to do when he's all the way on the third base side of the rubber. He steps across his body. He's really got to use that lower half to rip through the baseball. And so that's why you do see a more consistent increase in velocity. And then also the curveball, it's just breaking more. And so it's got just a ton of movement. It's very difficult for hitters to contend with both that high fastball up in the zone and then that big breaking curveball, which does have just a little bit better movement profile than the slider, although he does implement the slider still. And he's throwing the changeup too. So I think just the combination of that and then the movement over on the third base side of the rubber has helped Freddie a lot.
Yeah, the depth of that arsenal is better than I ever could have predicted when Freddie broke in a few years ago. I mean, it seems like maxing out his ability in terms of player development. Let's talk about Quinn Priester for a moment. Had another good start on Monday night. I mean, this is amazing. A twice traded first rounder. This is exactly can the Brewers keep getting away with this type story that people ask all the time? And there was a reason the Red Sox traded for him, just as there was a reason the Brewers did. At that time, the Brewers were really looking for everyone that could just take the ball and maybe give them 5 innings. They've made some changes, still gets a ton of ground balls. I think the one thing I keep looking at with Quinn Priester in his more recent starts, he's had a few big strikeout performances, 6 scoreless with 10 Ks against the Dodgers on the 18th of July, 11 strikeouts in 7 innings against the Rockies in late June. Is that actually part of Quinn Priester's game going forward? Do we see more swing and miss? I didn't expect that to be maybe one other part of what the Brewers could possibly bring by tweaking his arsenal a little bit.
It could be. I think he's got the ability to spin the baseball well enough with that slider, and he's got a big curveball too for lefties. I think it could be. Now, I think that he knows how good the sinker is, and it's a power sinker. I mean, they figured out something with his delivery where all of a sudden he had a late arm coming back with Pittsburgh, and Chris Hook again tapping into a guy and really tweaking more his delivery in order for him to be consistent, get that ball out in front through release. He is so consistent with getting it out in front with his fingers now, where now he is ripping off some sinkers. We've seen it up to 96 miles per hour. I know the average fastball velocity on Baseball Savant, it actually isn't that much higher. It's like, I think less than a mile per hour harder, like 0.7 harder this year. But the fact is that he's able to really repeat. He's really able to get that sinker, just kind of like commanded all over the zone. You see him like backdoor to righties, see front hip it to lefties. Now, he does have the ability to spit it, and he does have the ability to get whiffs with that hard spinning slider as well. So I think if he wanted to chase strikeouts, he could. He knows how good the defense is behind him in the middle of the infield with Joey Ortiz at short, Brice Turang at second. How good is Caleb Durbin playing third base right now? So I think he knows what's best for the team is for him to get weak contact. And so he's just kind of following William Contreras whenever William has caught his starts. And he is throwing the sinker a ton, and he's getting a ton of ground balls. But to answer your question more directly, I do think it's in there to get swing and miss and whiff. But his ground ball rate's at 58%. That's 6th highest in all of baseball among starters right now. So why go away from something that's working right now and try and chase those strikeouts?
Yeah, maybe you get the feel for something that gets swing and miss on a particular day, throw it a little bit more, and that's a big strikeout day. But generally, I think his bread and butter is going to be using that defense behind him effectively. But really nice story for the Brewers. I mean, like, it's just amazing how much this narrative has changed. Like, they were desperate for pitching early, and now they had so much depth at the trade deadline that Nestor Cortez was traded for Brandon Lockridge to get some outfield help. I mean, Logan Henderson just finally got a chance to step back in with Misiorowski on the IL. Pitched pretty well on Sunday. Tobias Myers, who was great last year, has been basically an extra guy. Chad Patrick leads rookie pitchers in F4 this season in the NL. He's been waiting in the wings at AAA for another opportunity. I mean, this is a great spot to be in. Like, to have some depth and maybe not have to use all of it in the second half of the season would be absolutely huge for them.
What a luxury to have all that depth in AAA. I mean, think about, too, if you do want to limit Jacob Misiorowski's innings once he comes off the IL, you could just kind of shuttle a guy up and down. If you want to go a 6-man rotation one time through, you can just shuttle Tobias Myers up and have him start. I mean, he's been throwing the ball a lot better in AAA. And don't forget about the depth that they had even in Aaron Savali. They traded him as well. So they had 2 guys in the rotation that they have traded away. And Nestor Cortez, although he was hurt, not in the rotation, he was poised to come back into the rotation. And then Aaron Savali as well. So, yeah, they have a spoil of riches right now in their starting rotation, and they have 3 guys. I can't name another team that are going to have 3 guys that have had big league success, recent big league success in AAA with options. 3. I mean, that is something that not any team can really talk about. So this team is poised and ready for a deep, a strong September and then a deep October run just because of all the arms, and they're going to be fresh and ready to go in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're still built like a team that would be able to take advantage of expanded rosters in September. Of course, that went away a few years ago, but they have that sort of depth. I think that's a big part of how they've exceeded expectations for a lot of folks in the last few years. Let's talk about the lineup, and let's talk about Andrew Vaughn. You mentioned Aaron Savali. The return for Aaron Savali was Andrew Vaughn. Vaughn, I think at the time, was at AAA for the White Sox. A lot of us were surprised they demoted him because as a team that's clearly in a rebuild, it seemed like a kind of waving the white flag in a way of saying, we can't figure out what's going on with Andrew Vaughn. And so the Brewers scoop him up in that trade. He's been ridiculous to start his career in Milwaukee. I just wonder, like, is this the function of a fresh start with a contending club? Is it having some new voices to talk about hitting with, specific tweaks in his setup and swing decisions, or just the perfect combination of those things that's helped him get off to such a fast start?
I think it's the perfect combination. I actually don't think there's been many tweaks in terms of his mechanics or his setup at the plate. There's probably some conscious effort there in terms of swing decisions in order for him not to chase outside the zone. Remember, he was a 34% chase guy with the White Sox. Major league average is 28%. So now he's at 22, 23% with the Brewers. Now, why is that? Some of that is contagious, right? So the Brewers just do not do that. Just 1 through 9. They do not chase pitches outside the zone. That's why they're so hard to pitch to. So now all of a sudden you go from kind of free swinging with the White Sox. All of a sudden you're in a group that doesn't, they just kind of wait for pitches that they can drive and take balls. Now that is something that is preached about to them from the hitting coaches, from Pat Murphy. In fact, Pat Murphy's talked about that. He said, look, if you chase outside the zone, if you don't make good swing decisions, you're not going to play. Now, I don't know if that was a specific conversation that they did have with Andrew Vaughn. I know he did tell him, hey, look, your job is not to hit home runs here. And maybe that's what he was doing with the Chicago White Sox. Remember, third overall pick in 2019. Maybe some pressure to kind of perform above what he's maybe capable of, although I think we're seeing what he's capable of right now with the pressure off of him. And so maybe trying to do a little bit too much with Chicago, comes over here to Milwaukee and says he kind of maybe feels like, okay, I'm just a cog in this wheel, that really impressive wheel right now that's hitting on all cylinders. And he does have just an immense amount of talent. I mean, he really does. That swing is as pretty as it gets. There's not too many pretty, you would say, quote unquote, pretty right-handed swings, but I think you would qualify this one as a pretty right-handed swing. I mean, third overall for a reason out of UC Berkeley. And this kid, remember, too, he is an intense competitor. When you talk to him, this kid wants to win. So all of a sudden you take him from a historically bad losing environment that just is what it is with the White Sox last year to now just the team playing way ahead of what everyone expected them to play like. So I think all those factors, like you said, the perfect storm of everything for Andrew Vaughn has him playing at just a really high clip, and it looks sustainable. It really does, just because the kid does have talent.
Yeah, and I feel like that door really didn't open until the Rhys Hoskins injury. Like, had Rhys Hoskins not gotten hurt, it may have taken a few weeks longer. Maybe we'd still be talking about Andrew Vaughn as a guy at AAA, just hoping to get another opportunity. Instead, 6 homers in his first 20 games in Milwaukee, and now looks like maybe a middle of the order fixture for them down the stretch and probably in 2026 as well. Vinny, I wanted to ask you about Brice Turang. There was a really well-written piece from Jack Stern over at brewerfanatic.com about Turang's batting practice power. And it's been a while since I've seen BP, but you probably get to see it a lot. And it's about how Turang, beyond Christian Yelich, probably shows as much left-handed power as anybody on the roster right now. And for those of us that are fantasy baseball players that watch the in-game results, you're kind of like, really? Like that much power? So I guess I'm curious to know, like, do you think long-term Turang can make the necessary adjustments to unlock that power in games? It's a completely different situation, of course, doing it in BP compared to doing it against opposing pitchers. But at least from a raw power perspective, it's in there. And this is a guy that's added a lot of bat speed. He's up about 4 miles per hour in bat speed since last year, which swing metrics are relatively new on the public side, but 4 miles per hour looks like a lot.
Yeah, it does. And part of the reason why he has added the bat speed, he's added strength, right? So he added about 20 pounds after the 2023 season. Looked like he was really frail and kind of lost a bunch of weight after his rookie season. Remember, he was up and down from AAA. Craig Counsell was still the manager. And I think a lot of people were questioning, okay, is this a glove first only guy that's going to really hit? I mean, he hit 218 that first year. He comes back in 2024 last year, and he really focused on just, getting his hits. Low line drives the other way, hit the ball on the ground, bunt for hits. Really don't even concern yourself with pulling the ball, especially in the air. So now that worked, right? He got his hits. This is kind of like an old school development type of a mentality, I think, that they took with Brice Turang and allowed him the leash and the latitude, especially Pat Murphy allowed him this. Just get your hits, get on base, and play platinum glove level defense. He did that on the defensive side, and then he also did it on the offensive side of what he was directed to do. Now he adds the weight. He understands his swing a little bit better now as a 25-year-old, where all of a sudden I think he knows when he can take his shots to go ahead, get the head out, pull the ball in the air. Now, I read that article too. It was a great article by Jack Stern. I don't think he's consciously trying to pull the ball in the air. I think he's picking his spots now, and he'll continue to learn how to do this. And again, this is how they used to develop hitters, right? Remember Tony Gwynn used to hit the ball on the ground in that 5.5 hole, had a conversation with Ted Williams, and then started pulling the ball for home runs his last couple of seasons. So I do think that it's going to be in there for Brice when he continues to learn, all right, this is when I can go ahead and take my shot, kind of just move my contact point out a little bit right here on this 2-0 pitch against this guy with this sinker or whatever the case may be. I think he's going to continue to learn that. I think you'll see probably double-digit home runs pretty consistently from Brice going forward as he continues to learn this. I don't know, Derek, if you're going to get the 20s and the 25 homers from Brice, but this is a kid that, remember, when he was drafted, that was the year that he was supposedly the number 1 high school bat in the country. So there is, talk about talent, there's all kinds of talent from Brice. And I do think, 15 in the 15 range is probably going to be something realistic for him going forward.
Yeah, and I think something we talk a lot about in this show, Jed Lowry talks about intent for hitters. You go up there with a plan, and you can talk to guys, you can maybe kind of reverse engineer and figure out what the plan is. I think the success you described for Turang, what's worked for him so far, might lead him to be pitched in a way where he's going to be challenged with pitches that he could pull in the air. So if he can find the ability to take advantage of those pitches, it'll take something away from opposing pitchers as well, and that might give him that kind of well-rounded offensive profile that a lot of folks are hoping for. But you got to tip the cap to that article. I think came out Saturday morning, and Brice Turang had a 2-homer game on Sunday, which is that's like if you make content, you write, you talk about players, that's exactly what you want. Perfect timing from Jack on that one. But this lineup, okay, so they're top 10 in WOBA, top 10 in WRC plus. The skeptics always point to the lack of power output. They were 22nd in homers entering play on Monday, and they'll nitpick the lack of familiar names beyond Christian Yelich and William Contreras, and I think Jackson Chourio for a lot of people is kind of part of that core now. And especially with Chourio down right now, he's got a hamstring injury. It looks like that might be a little worse than they initially thought. He had a PRP injection for that. I think Pat Murphy over the weekend said it could be more than a month-long absence for Jackson Chourio too. That would put him back in September. So we'll see how that plays out. But just as far as what you saw from Jackson Chourio pre-injury this year versus last year, so much looked the same on paper. What kinds of growth did you see from him as he picked up more experience over the course of the season?
Well, he really did struggle early on. At times, there would be stretches where I think it was like a 1 for 34 stretch or something in there at one point with Jackson, and you were concerned because you saw the walk rate. It was at 1.6%. I got it written down here, but he had 4 walks in his first 209 plate appearances. So that's a long stretch of time to only have 4 walks. I mean, pitchers were understanding, okay, I know how to get this guy out. I just got to throw a bunch of sliders down and out of the zone and then rip off a couple of fastballs above the zone and he's going to be out. And that's how they were attacking him at times. Now, when they made a mistake, talk about talent. This kid would just hammer it and barrel it up and hit a home run or a double. Now, he wasn't able to be consistent because, again, pitchers understood, like, I just don't have to make mistakes against this guy and he's going to be out. Now, all of a sudden, his last... since then, so that was from the start of the season until May 20th. And then, so since May 20th, the walk rate is at 6.8%. So at this point now, he is being a little bit more patient, waiting for those mistakes. The other thing about Jackson, Derek, is the fact that a guy could be dealing against them. And I don't care if it's Paul Skeens. I don't care what the name is on the back of the jersey. A guy could be a Cy Young dealing, mowing down everybody else, throw his best pitch in a great location against Jackson, and that kid will barrel it up for a home run to the opposite field. I mean, it is like uncanny how often he has done that. And so that is the concern, that he is out right now, maybe over a month. Like, they're playing a stretch of games right now against the Nats and then the Braves right now where it's, the pitching hasn't been great on both those opponents. But now as we're getting into, the rest of August and you play against some of these guys that have a little bit better stuff, more consistent arsenal, more consistent ability to command the baseball. Without Jackson in there, we'll see how the Brewers contend with some of these better arms. But his kid's 21. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. The Brewers have 8.5 more years of control with Jackson Chourio with that contract he signed. So they're going to be good for a long time because that kid is going to continue to even get better, which is scary.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a really aggressive approach to begin the season and slowly kind of dialed that back a little bit because it's not going to, chasing 40% of the time in the long run is not going to work. It might work in the short term with great bat speed and great coverage, but eventually that becomes a bit of a flaw that pitchers can exploit even more. I want to talk to you about Sal Frelick. I think there's a player archetype that's making a comeback. I mean, high OBP's been in for a while, but low K, great bat-to-ball skills, great defender, can play all 3 outfield spots really well, even had a taste of third base last spring. I kind of see, like, Frelick's their version of Stephen Kwan in Milwaukee, basically. Like, that's the comp I would make. So is Frelick and is even this player type in general still underrated around the game?
I love that comp because I do. That is a great comp. I actually didn't think of that before you said that. But yeah, I do think that player type is underrated. And I think that player type is going to be making a comeback. The Isaac Collins of the world, right? These guys that are just savvy, hard-nosed, super high baseball IQ, know where to throw the baseball every single time from the outfield, know how to go from first to third, know when to steal a base. Know when you kind of overmatched by the pitcher, so you're just going to take a 2-strike approach from pitch 1 and battle him for 10 pitches. Stuff like that where it's being valued again in the game, which I love. And Sal, Frelick, Stephen Kwan, guys like that, they personify that version of a player that really does it helps the team win in ways that can't really be measured, because think about what that does to a pitcher when you have Sal Frelick or Steven Kwan types leading off the game, and then all of a sudden you have to face Jose Ramirez with the Guardians, and then Jackson Chourio, Christian Yelich, William Contreras behind Sal Frelick after you thought you were going to be able to really kind of get him out with making a good pitch, but no, it was a 10-pitch battle. He's now on first because of an infield hit because he doesn't strike out. And now there's a threat of a stolen base, and now you have to contend with Jackson Chourio. Super underrated, and just a cog. Talk about a cog in this system right here with the Milwaukee Brewers that is invaluable, that is irreplaceable, quite frankly. But I do think you're going to see more guys like that acquired in the draft and in trades more often. Guys that just have that super high baseball IQ that are just so scrappy and just almost impossible to really strike out, and really difficult to get out in general.
Yeah, I like the outlier players. I mean, a couple of years ago, I think it was Luis Arias. You're going, oh, this guy has just got the sub 5% strikeout rate in the big leagues. And the amazing thing is we're starting to see another group of players like that, but they also have a lot of defensive value. Jacob Wilson, shortstop for the A's, a early first round draft pick. I mean, I just want to see what kinds of development paths these players go down, because I think if you start with a great hit tool, there is that chance of unlocking more power. Maybe it's 15 homer power like we talked about with Turang, but I think some of these guys are going to unlock 20, 25 home run power over time as well. This whole organization, I mean, the glue guys, Pat Murphy calls them the average Joes as a group. And Isaac Collins was the guy that stepped up on Monday night with the 3-run homer. And you get the sense Brandon Lockridge is another player like that. You mentioned Caleb Durbin. There's something about the player types the Brewers are pursuing. The low strikeout rate clearly matters, and the premium defensive ability also matters. That's what jumped off the page when they added Lockridge. It was like, oh, okay. Like they clearly like this guy because he's a great defender, he runs well, and he can put the bat on the ball. And anything else that he does beyond that is a bonus. But how much of it is also having the right people as far as the manager and the coaching staff too? It just seems like, as difficult as it can be for an organization that's struggling to get everybody rowing in the same direction, the Brewers seem to have a better sense of cohesiveness. Does that credit go to Pat Murphy? Does it go to Matt Arnold? Does it kind of spread out over all different parts of the organization? Because they just seem like they're really in sync.
Yeah, it does. It's spread out throughout everybody, because Matt Arnold's not going to acquire a player unless he is capable of doing exactly what you just described. And then Pat Murphy, I mean, this guy is the best manager in baseball. I mean, he really is. I mean, the fact that he can get all these guys kind of rowing in the same direction with that same single-minded focus of how can I help the team win tonight? How can I play fundamental baseball to help the team win tonight? How can I focus on this pitch when I'm on second base, or let's say I'm on first base with 2 outs in the 4th inning? My job isn't just to get to the next base. My job is to actually score. How can I get? Pat Murphy has a way of fostering that kind of mindset to every guy in every moment of the game. And if you don't think that way, you're not going to play. In fact, they'll get rid of you. If you're a guy that's not a team first guy, and I'm not going to mention any names on this podcast because it's not going to disparage anybody, but there are guys in the past that they have just flat out, that is not the right guy. And so that is relayed then to Matt Arnold. And Matt Arnold knows which kind of guy fits in this clubhouse. But it's also Pat Murphy then getting his arms around him. The rest of the coaching staff as well. It's a phenomenal coaching staff. If you're a pitcher, Chris Hook and Jim Henderson are going to get a hold of you. Nestor Corridor is an extremely underrated part of this coaching staff. Charlie Green as well. All the hitting coaches. They just do a phenomenal job of getting buy-in, but it is from top down for sure. I mean, you could even say that it starts with, Mark Antanasio, the owner. They're all in sync with each other. They just do a phenomenal job of being all in sync and getting to that sweet spot of it almost feels, Derek, like it feels like a team in college that is just all pulling for each other. That's rah-rah, right? And they're not necessarily all rah-rah, but that's the feeling that you get when you walk through that clubhouse, or a great minor league team that's on a crazy run or whatever. That's, they're just having fun. They're not playing for a contract whatsoever. That's this team. And Pat Murphy gets these guys to think like that and to buy in. And it's hard to repeat. I think Stephen Vogt has a similar feel, right, in Cleveland and then also in Detroit. It feels like that's kind of the model that maybe you'll see other teams go to, especially small market teams. But it is an advantage too, because you're relying on the lesser known player that you acquired from the minor league Rule 5. Or as a DFA guy, you're relying on those guys, where it's almost as if the big contract guys, some of those teams that are relying on those big contract money, big dollar players, it's almost it's a little bit of a disadvantage, because think about it. If you sign a guy, maybe it's a mid-level free agent, and you have to play him because of the contract associated with him. So you have to play him even if he is struggling. So the Brewers, they throw 5 guys against the wall and see what sticks, type of a thing. And so I do think that is a little bit of an advantage that no one really talks about with the small market team, that because you rely on the guys, the media is going to give you a pass for not signing players because you can't afford it. But then also, like, you're giving all these guys who need a chance, want a chance, can thrive in an environment like Milwaukee, like Detroit, like Cleveland, and all of a sudden can develop themselves into a major league player. It's an advantage that no one's really talking about, and I think it's noteworthy, and they're doing it here in Milwaukee.
And it does seem like the resources put into scouting and coaching are above the weight class, and they're getting good results because they're investing in the right places too, right? Like, you're putting in, like, a lot of the organizations are cutting on scouting and even cutting on analytics and different things. And I don't get the sense that the Brewers are functioning that way. They seem like they want to dig in every corner. I mean, look at some of the programs, some of the places these guys have come from. You mentioned the Rule 5 pick out of AAA. I mean, that was Isaac Collins. Like, Isaac Collins was a AAA Rule 5 pick from the Rockies organization. How he didn't get a chance in Colorado, I can't explain that. But Misiorowski, even Crowder College, small college, same as Ashby. Like, it's just every corner of the baseball world seems like a place where they're scouting and looking for talent right now too. And I think that's helping a lot. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, Vinny, before we go, and I know you got a series to continue, got to go to the ballpark here shortly. Jesus Mate and Luis Pena both get promoted to High A Wisconsin. I was looking at the schedule. I think the first game in Appleton is going to be Tuesday the 12th, so 1 week from today. What have you seen from Mate and Pena and your chances to watch them at various points so far? And how excited should fans be to have a chance to get to watch them closer to home, at least for the final 2 months of this 2025 season?
Yeah, get out to Appleton. Get out to a T-Rats game to watch these kids play, because they're 18 and they're tearing it up. They tore it up at the low A level in Carolina. They're just it's interesting to watch and to kind of follow some of these young players, because here's the thing that people have to realize about prospects, right? So I remember Lorenzo Cain, age 18, coming out of high school. He was, you saw the tools and you're like, okay, so when you take a look at the tools, he can run, ball jumps off his bat, he's super athletic, he can play center field. But oh, by the way, he won the MVP for the Arizona League and he hit like 340. Okay, so the fact that, like, these guys get out there and perform immediately is a huge factor in them determining whether or not they're going to be prospects. And they're going to be major impact big leaguers. These two kids at age 18 have performed at the lowest level at this point, and they're going to continue to perform because they do have the tools and the talent, but they're also putting the numbers up on the board. So go out there and watch these kids play, because these guys are going to be the future of the Brewers, and it might be sooner than later.
Yeah, it might just be a couple of years down the road, and it's hard to say that about 18-year-olds at High A, but that's the kind of path that Mate and Pena are on. Vinny, we really appreciate your time and your insight. We're all looking forward to seeing how this plays out over the final 2 months and hopefully deep into October.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime, Derek. Thanks.
All right, we do have one quick update. Vinny and I were talking about Jackson Chourio in that conversation. The good news, since I spoke to Vinny on Tuesday, sounds like he'll be back in 2 to 4 weeks. Initially, it looked like it might be even longer than that, so some good news there. Maybe it lingers into early September, but a really important bat for that Brewers lineup.
That is really good news.
Yeah.
Because if he'd lost playoff time, that would have been bad.
Yeah, so and having a few weeks in September, I think, is also really important to get the timing back and to be like rolling going into a possible playoff run. in October. One other news item that I wanted to get to before we go today, in case we missed it earlier in the week, Grayson Rodriguez is going to have elbow debridement surgery. And my only note on that was, well, at least it's not Tommy John surgery. Like,
Yeah.
I think that means he's got a better chance of being ready to go for the start of 2026, at least.
I've never heard of this. Have you?
I'm trying to think of comps, and none came to mind. None.
Elbow debridement surgery in the past have been Felix Bautista. Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish has repeatedly had stress reaction problems in his shoulder, in his elbow. And I think that's, you're talking, it's like related to bone spurs and like, just having junk in the way, basically. Adam Liberatore, David Fry. Is that part of his Tommy John, or was that before that?
Well, and that's the part that I'm not sure of too, is like, could you have debridement along with a ligament repair? Like, you could probably have it with or without.
Oh, this is funny. This is the procedure that removes bone chips.
Yeah.
So we're hearing about, Mariners, or like with the Mariners saying that people don't really do this surgery anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bryce Miller has bone chips. Maybe Bryce Miller is headed towards this surgery, huh?
Well, yeah, if this, and it would have taken Bryce Miller out for the season if he'd had it earlier in the year when that injury first popped up. So I guess that doesn't necessarily put Grayson Rodriguez back on the mound by opening day, but I just think it's not going to be a calendar year, most likely, as a result of this procedure before he's back. That's sort of we'll know after the surgery, like how much they cleaned up.
Yu Darvish had it in 2018, and in 2018, he was 32. So he is older than Grayson Rodriguez. But in 2019, a 33-year-old Yu Darvish threw almost 180 innings for the Chicago Cubs with a 3.98 ERA, 110 WHIP, and that by WAR was one of his median seasons. Not as necessarily his very best, but a good season. But there's something in the Grayson thing that turns me off. There's something about just how this has lingered forever, and is there something missing in the conversation between the team and the player? Like, why has it been so start and stop and taken so long? And why are they having a hard time identifying the problem? You know what I mean? Like, there's something that turns me off about the ongoing conversation between Grayson and his team. Like that, I don't get it.
We'll probably know more in the months ahead, but we'll see where it goes from here.
Producer Brian, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah,
Father of the bride.
Father of the bride. Come on, no.
Boo. Boo this man.
Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together.
You go. Yeah.
Thank you again to Vinny Rottino for dropping by and talking Brewers with me. Always love doing that. Could do that as much as I want when Eno's not here, but also love having Eno back. You can find us on Blue Sky, enosaris.bsky.social, imdvr.bsky.social. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.